So because we thought that there had been enough debates, that we would simply do a town hall. So all the questions will come from the audience. I have not pre-prepared any questions, nor has Norm. They will be your questions of these two candidates. And we're going to have probably about an hour and 10 minutes to ask questions, so you have a lot of time. The questions will go back and forth, not necessarily to each candidate. Some questions are meant directly to one candidate or the other, and I will try to moderate that accordingly. Obviously, the majority of the questions will be answered by both, but sometimes a question comes up and only I can answer it. What can I say? So if that would be the case, I'll try to make sure that one candidate is not getting more time than the other based on that type of question. We try to be fair at all points. The answers, they will have 45 seconds to answer your question. So we're not going to get into really long speeches. Your questions should likewise be short with not, a big long story behind it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say that. But, try to get to the question, because that's the important part. You want your question answered, and we want to hear those answers. So that's the real reason we're all here. Alan will be timing them. He will be quietly letting them know that their time is up. We've given him a hammer for those that can't follow time. So, no, but that's the idea, is that we try to get as many of our questions answered as possible, and I'm quite certain that you will have an adequate amount of time for whatever questions you do have. The candidates will not have an opening statement. This is your opening statement. And the reason for that is, I think it's better for you to have your question uncluttered by something that either one of the candidates might say in their opening remarks. It can mess up a question you already had planned. It might answer one that you won't ask, but somebody else needs to hear. So we've eliminated that part, but they will have 3 minutes each at the end for their closing remarks. So hopefully we will have all of the questions that we ever wanted answers for asked here tonight. And with that, it's my appreciation to both of you for coming here. Lisa's been here a number of times. Phil is his first journey here, and we'll see who it is that'll be coming back. Because we expect you to be back. Okay, and with that, we will open the questions on the floor, and just raise your hand, and Norm will bring you the microphone. And when you're not using the microphone, Norman, please remember to turn it off. Same information for the two of you. And if you could state your name.
Susan, what's your take on the restrictions on natural gas use in the city of Seattle? And sort of as a follow-up, do you think there are any risks to having a single source of energy for the city, like electricity? Thank you.
Because I failed to flip a coin, who's got one? I forgot to flip the coin to see who answers first. Oh, do you want to flip it? Call the air, Lisa. Okay, Lisa will answer the first question.
They need to stand up so we can see their faces.
You can do that. So the council has not yet passed any restrictions on the use of natural gas. I actually requested that this legislation be held precisely to get the answers to questions that you're asking, whether or not the city light energy load is sufficient to meet the need. They'll be bringing back legislation once we have more information about the ability of the city light load to meet the need. There are restrictions in the proposed legislation, but they're only for new structures, and they also have exemptions for folks who need natural gas, particularly the types of businesses like laundries, restaurants, and a number of other exemptions that are built in it, but we have not yet voted on that legislation, and I'm reserving my opinion on it to get more technical information from Seattle City Light.
And also, I I would say that I was opposed to the concept when it came up, and I know talking to the general contractors and the builders of the city and also the restaurateurs and a lot of other people that it was not a very good idea. So luckily it is currently shelved and not going anywhere.
Why not a good idea?
Well, one of the things is it does have a much lower carbon footprint than than fossil fuels, especially like heating oil, and even people still using wood stove, even some of the pellet-based ones. That natural gas actually is a good alternative right now. Eventually, obviously, we've got to get away from it overall, but not yet, and not like this proposition was.
Next question?
My name is Sharon. We know that the major cause of homelessness are drug addiction and mental health problems. What are your ideas on how we should address these issues? The causes, not housing.
Yes.
Yes, well, I'm glad you asked it that way, because the fact is, even though we do need more affordable housing, being a public defender for most of the last 15 years, a lot of my clients are the people in this situation. And when I meet with them, I meet with people that are around them. And mental health issues and substance abuse issues are a huge part of this. And, anybody who's even spent a short period of time not knowing where they live, it gets worse and worse and worse the more you're forced to actually live on the street. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to start working on a more community-based model. So I have a friend who's a pastor in Burien that runs a sober support house. And one of the things they do is they look to get people off the street and work with their illnesses, work with the substance abuse issues. Because a lot of times people are just self-medicating those unaddressed mental health issues.
So it is true that a major driver of homelessness is mental illness and as well as substance abuse disorder. I agree with candidate Tavel in that people can't address their underlying issues associated with their homelessness if they don't have a roof over their head. So there are many models. Community-based housing, such as candidate Tavel mentioned, is one model. Another model is something called permanent supportive housing. It is housing with wraparound services, and 95% of the people who get into permanent supportive housing, regardless of whether or not they have mental illness or substance abuse disorder, stay in the housing once they get in.
I'd like to follow that up a little bit more. I heard Sharon's question just a little bit different. I think the question would be, what other solutions do you have besides housing? One example would be, we need funds for social workers and outreach workers, and what does the city council have planned, or you as a city council member, or you as the possible city council member, what do you have planned with regard to that? Is that a little more clear, Sharon?
Yes.
Thank you.
You can go first. Major.
One of the things is we need to expand the navigation teams that go out with the city police and social workers to be able to interact with those people and find out what they need. Down at the Regional Justice Center in Kent, because King County does most of the work with mental health issues, there is space to potentially start a program there where we could actually be addressing people's mental health issues. And it's something that you do also as a transitional program if you're coming out of jail and still are experiencing those problems, to be in a program like that. Also to support things like the University of Washington. They've expanded now, they've got 180 beds, I believe, coming online for dealing with people that are having these mental health issues. So we need to hire more social workers. We need to also make sure we pay the social workers a lot better. But we just need more people. And I think we also need to look at some of the faith-based organizations that are out in the neighborhood doing a good job to see how the city can support them better.
So in addition to the work that the navigation team does, the city also funds outreach workers, and we have now for the first time geographically based outreach workers assigned to the Southwest Precinct. And so what I'm working on doing is when you contact my office about a person that you see who's living outside in an unauthorized encampment, I let folks know how they can file a complaint. But what I'm also doing is I'm sharing that information with our outreach workers so that they can go out. Because sometimes the city doesn't prioritize an encampment for removal with the navigation teams. And so With this approach, we can be using your voices to elevate the needs of folks in the community and linking them with outreach services, whether or not the navigation team is able to go out and see them.
My name is Jackie. Another reason for homelessness is rent. You're putting people on the street. Where are they going to go? That's my first question. My second question, it's been on the news about the budget, how the city can't balance their books. We can tell that by the city looks terrible. Work is not being done in the city.
Jackie, can we take yours one question at a time and you can go ahead and ask them separately?
Oh, she can answer all at one time.
Well,
Is that okay?
I would prefer them one question at a time.
Okay.
So the first one is,
The first one is, rent is putting people on the street. They're becoming homeless because they can't afford to rent.
So state law has a prohibition for every city and every county within Washington State. It's a prohibition on regulating rent. So cities like Seattle can't pass laws that regulate rent. So I'm working with our state legislature to remove that prohibition in state law so cities like Seattle and other cities throughout the state can address this. I've also been working on eviction reform, allowing people who get 3-day pay or vacate notices more time. They now have 14 days under the law. Previously, judges couldn't consider extenuating circumstances for the reasons why people can't pay rent. Now judges have discretion. As it relates to the budget, I think what you're hearing is that people are concerned about the outcomes associated with the funding. We have a balanced budget. State law requires that we pass a balanced budget. Every year the budget is balanced.
So I understand what you're saying about rent. I know in May, my landlord came to me and he showed me his property taxes, how they had gone from $3,000 a year to $4,500 a year. And he explained that over the last 3 years, there's been a 9% increase, an 18% increase, and then a 50% increase. And one of the issues that I have is we're talking about affordable housing all the time, yet it feels like we're being taxed at a highest and best use, and that the region and the city just seem to be looking to get as much of that as humanly possible. So one of the things I'd like to do is find the low-cost housing that we have right now and make sure it stays that way, so that the older buildings don't get purchased, torn down, and then new things built that are not affordable. Also, there have been some plans put on the table for finding ways to give incentives to landlords to keeping rents lower. And then also we have West Seattle Helpline.
My next question is, it's been on the news constantly about where's the money going to take care of Seattle.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat that?
My next question is, it's been on the news about the budget. Whereas people been saying, what are you doing with the money of Seattle?
Yes, so that's in fact one of the fundamental things I've been asking through this whole campaign is just as a resident of this city, it seems like our council does not do a good job of understanding what we get for the money we spend and making sure that we're getting enough to take care of the whole city. And I know when I talk to people on the doors, it's that same kind of question. And yes, they do have to balance the budget, but I don't get a sense that we know what they're doing with it. I have issues of big projects that have been mismanaged over the years, the fact that we have services being duplicated by different service providers and they're all still getting money for that. And so I think we need to understand better, because if you can't measure the money, then you can't manage it. And I don't think we do a good job understanding what we get for what we spend.
So 55% of the city's general fund dollars go for public safety, so for fire and police. Another large percentage go for things like transportation and parks projects and operations. The focus on human services funding is a very small part of the city's budget, and we have done a lot. We've moved towards what's called results-based accounting, so that providers are reporting on outcomes associated with that funding. That information is transparent and all available on city websites. In addition, I've led the council to moving towards an accountability approach towards our large capital projects. So a lot lot of those projects we've seen have gone over budget or beyond their timeline that they're supposed to be built. And now the council is creating a watch list and doing independent monitoring of the executive department's spending of our dollars.
My last question, I just got your flyer in the mail today. You said big money is taking over, trying to buy city council. Big money has taken over Seattle and city council.
I'm going to ask one of the questions from the car.
Is that something we could respond to?
Yes, Lisa would respond first.
Okay.
So yes, I would agree with that assessment. That's was why the flyer that you received reflects that. The big business PACs in the city have contributed more money to these little local elections than we've ever seen in the history of the city. We voted for democracy vouchers, the ability of everybody to contribute to local democracies, and we voted for a district election system so that the folks in our neighborhoods could get closer to their elected officials and have more influence. 99% of the spending from these big business PACs for this district come from outside of District 1.
So I actually appreciate you making that comment, because I know clearly my opponent's saying this and other people are saying, look at all the money that you're getting from these PACs. And what I want to clear up is, I'm not. There are political action committees that get money and then they run advertising for what they want. In this case, those PACs want to see a change in our city government because they don't like the direction of the city, they don't think our council is listening, and they think our council is very bad for business. But what I will tell you is, I would love to see that money out of it, because I think it muddies the water, and it makes it difficult for me to talk to people about the fact that I'm a neighborhood person. You know, I'm the vice president of the Morgan Community Association. I'm a public defender. I'm a coach in my son's bowling league. I'm just a person in this neighborhood. They don't give me any of that money. This they do. In fact, I only find out about it after things happen. So what I can say is they're not giving it directly to me.
I have a follow-up to that for both of you. How would you, if it was within your ability, how would you remove that money? I mean, it's Citizens United Seattle version is exactly what it is. So how would you propose that that money be removed or be prohibited?
So I would actually, I would like to see a way that that money is taken out of the race. I would say that if you had corporations, limit them just like everybody else. So if, like myself and like Councilmember Herbold, we were part of the Democracy Voucher Program, that says every individual can give you $250 and they can give you $100 in vouchers. I think the big businesses should be limited that same exact way. There's no reason that they should be able to allow to drop $1 million in the middle of the race for like some of the large labor unions. They're also spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I don't know if you know, there's $8.4 million that has been spent by businesses and unions and outside interests on these 7 races. And the 7 races themselves are in the neighborhood of like $2 million. So they're just multiplying what we're doing. I would just see them limited just like everybody else.
As Diane mentioned, there are some limitations to doing what candidate Tavel suggests through Citizens United. So Councilmember Gonzalez has a really interesting proposal that considers the Citizens United ruling and really focuses on the corporate ownership of these large businesses and whether or not there's a certain percentage of corporate ownership that is foreign ownership. And the reason why is I can't, as an individual, accept money from somebody who does not live in this country towards my campaign. And so it's based on that same principle of not taking money from foreign nationals, and it's making the same argument that we should do the same for companies that have more than 5% of their ownership outside of the United States.
Thank you.
Gentleman behind you with a question. Hand up first, then you next.
My name is Bill McKay. We're seeing that a lot of the downtown businesses are closing the doors because of increased, basically, small petty theft. They just can't afford to cover it. I'm working in District 1. We're starting to see the same thing happen here. I would like to know what you two candidates plan on doing to protect our small mom and pop stores in West Seattle from this petty theft that's running them out of business. They run on a real small margin.
So I'm really excited that the city is going to be rolling out a new community service officer program. This is something that I championed 2 years ago in the budget process, and we've been able to negotiate with our labor unions to create a new classification of Seattle Police Department employee. These folks will be out there and be taking off some of the responsibilities of armed police officers, which will allow more visibility of our armed police officers doing proactive policing in our neighborhoods. One of the things that we hear from the micro-policing plan is the #1 issue that people in this district identify as a problem with public safety is the lack of visibility. So we need to shift some of the responsibilities that police officers have now to the CSOs so that police can do traditional law enforcement.
I think it's very important to know that we've had the money in the budget for the community service officers for 2 years. And there's been talk that it's taken 2 years to negotiate how that comes about. That's too long. The money's been there, we could have had them there, and we failed to do it. The other thing we have to do is just properly staff and fund the police department. I sit on the Southwest Precinct Advisory Council. They've been seeking to get 16 new officers so they can have bike patrols and foot patrols in our neighborhoods and specifically in the business districts so they can respond. But we don't do that because we're still under the consent decree. But the fact is the police department doesn't feel supported. They don't feel like the council has their back, like the mayor has their back, and that's what we need. And I'm actually the only candidate out of all 14 that's been endorsed by both the King County Sheriff, Nancy Jo Hinkman, and also the Seattle Police Department. And so they know I will help them.
Can I follow up on that really quick? My follow-up on that would be this. We used to have community service officers and we had CSO offices. In fact, one right up the hill, and there was one in West Seattle. They've been all over the place. And it was the responsibility of the Seattle City Council and their budget that we lost those. So I just had a difficult time with the comments from both of you when these existed at one time, and you're not talking about that mistake.
So that happened in 2008 during the recession. I happened to be working for a council member at the time, and he fought tooth and nail. It was a large unit. It went from 16, and we tried to keep 8. They wanted to cut the whole thing, and to the point where it took too long to negotiate. As folks know, the city council, based on the recommendation of the mayor, approved the SPA contract in February. And that's a two-way contract between SPA and the city of Seattle. It's not completely in the hands of the city, much less the city council, when that contract is negotiated. So it's really important to understand what the role is of the council versus the city as a whole and its departments.
If you have a comment, Bill, that's fine.
I mean, I would just say that the two things that show that we are not getting the leadership in the city we need is just like that. That money was there for the community service officers to be put in place, didn't happen. In 2015, all the candidates were talking about the police contract with SPOG, and 3 years later, when it was finally taken care of. And those, in my opinion, are failures of our leadership to do what we need in a timely fashion.
Hi, my name is Linda, and my major issue in this area is pollution. I guess what I'm looking at for you, I know that you're the chair of the utilities department, and so I'm sure that covers a lot of things with garbage service and water quality issues and electrical lines. What I'm seeing in this area, my neighbors just cut a bunch of their trees down to protect their electrical lines, but I'm not seeing the city really go through and make sure it was a safety issue for California before burning down that whole town. The other thing that I would look at is maybe for you, I haven't heard those sound bites, and I know I probably need to go to those meetings for that specific chair when those items are addressed. But I'm also seeing things like water quality issues. One of my neighbors just had piles of bark mold beauty mart parked in front of the drain that goes on our street, which just becomes a river at times. And I'm wondering what programs you have in place to make sure that the maintenance is being done on the lines for the sewage and for just the water drainage in general. That lady died over in Capitol Hill, and you're kind of over all of Seattle. One of my friends, I'm not supposed to say, but answer, and she had basically just sold it, and I don't know how she got dragged into
Time.
litigation. Anyway, what are you going out to those plants and looking what the maintenance schedules are for our area? And could you somehow let people know, what needs to be addressed, sewer lines need to be maintained, and so on? Here you go. Thanks.
So the majority of the cities and the counties wastewater is handled by King County government. You are right, though, that I do have oversight on the council for Seattle Public Utilities. I do not have Seattle City Light, that is another council member. But the work that I do for Seattle Public Utilities as it relates specifically to drainage and wastewater is really focused on ramping up our investments in what's called green stormwater infrastructure. So those are the rain gardens that you see throughout the city. The city is in under a federal consent decree because we are not properly dealing with our wastewater. So I'm also overseeing one of Seattle Public Utilities' largest construction projects, the Ship Canal Water Quality Project, which is going to address the wastewater issues that the federal government has addressed, and we are making sure that that project is on target and on budget.
My name's Keith. Seattle used to be a city of families, and with Amazon and corporations seeming to be taking over the city, the Manhattanization of Seattle is kind of alarming to some of us. This couldn't be done without the permission of the city council in zoning. They build apartments for the rich techie workers without parking. You can't build all this stuff unless the city council zones it. Where's the balance? Family, city, or Manhattan?
No. I mean, so the interesting thing that we face in this city is as we are growing incredibly rapidly. I mean, there's 8,000 people new in this district in the last 4 years alone. And you're right that I think the city council has not done a good job of planning for it. And in fact, in some ways, I think it's sort of setting up the smorgasbord for developers just to upzone as much as they can, build as much as they can, as fast as they can, which means we lose the livability on it. I mean, I don't know how many people here knew about the Plan HALA, the Housing Affordability and Livability Agenda, and I know a lot of people felt that the L was silent. It was just HA. It wasn't HALA anymore because it was just build as much as we can because the only issue is housing and just build on every square inch, whether it's accessory dwelling. So we have to work on that, I agree.
So you're right, the city council does approve the zoning, but we don't control who builds. And so what I've been working on doing is I've been working to make sure that we increase our funding for affordable housing so that more of the builders are nonprofit housing developers and not the for-profit housing developers. 85% of the housing development in this region over the last 10 years, long before I was a council member, but over the last 10 years has been luxury housing. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to, the reason why so many people are moving to Seattle for these jobs is because we need to do a better job of training our local workforce. So that if we're training our local workforce, a lot of folks who are coming into these high-income jobs won't be pushing out our folks who are getting displaced because of the high price of housing.
As a follow-up?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that question, maybe it wasn't clear, but we'll just answer. The zoning can prohibit the big corporations from building these huge buildings. If you don't allow a building to be only so big, they can't do it.
We can't control who builds.
But you can control if it can be built at all, that's my point, isn't that true?
Yes, I'm going to let her follow up there.
Sure, I mean, we could not do any zoning changes, absolutely, but then if we didn't do any zoning changes, then we wouldn't have this new program that we have here in Seattle called the Mandatory Housing Affordability Program, which requires developers, no matter what they're building, to contribute to affordable housing. We gave a small increment of additional density in exchange for the requirement. Seattle is the only city in the nation that requires it no matter what's being built, whether or not it's housing or commercial property, and in every neighborhood throughout the city. Some cities have these inclusionary zoning programs, but they're only for residential, and they're only in some neighborhoods. This is the most extensive version of this program, and we could not do it. We could not have this requirement without the small zoning increase that we gave.
What I'll say is we've got urban villages all around Seattle. We got the downtown. I don't believe that each of the urban villages should necessarily have the same upzones. And even though they're slightly different, I think we need to look at exactly that, what we're allowing. You know, the fact that Morgan and Admiral are very different from the Alaska Junction and very different from Westwood Village and South Park. And we have a downtown now that if we are going to grow like this, we should be looking at creating more of a 24-hour downtown. That when I moved here 20 years ago, there was the downtown and then surrounded what seemed like suburban neighborhoods. And what I feel is our city council is just trying to upzone the entire city as far as they can. And I don't want to see that happen. I want balance.
Again, I'm going to follow up on Keith's question because I don't think that you answered all of what he asked. When you have changed the zoning to allow the upbuilding in all of these as, who was here in the 80s and remembers the designs for the urban villages? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of them actually read them? Even then it was a problem with parking. You know, for some reason, it seems like it's a pipe dream of those who are okaying the zoning and those who are building the buildings, that they don't have to create parking below ground. And granted, that's more expensive, but you expect that we're going to have a transit so wonderful that people are just going to get in their on their bus. But what happens when Susan wants to come and visit me from her little urban village and I'm going to have a dinner party? Where the hell are they supposed to park? We don't even have enough parking for one-car households right now in West Seattle, and it is getting worse every single day. Yet nobody, and the city council certainly has not addressed that, and I know that it's been a complaint for many, many years. Lisa, I'll let you answer.
So the parking requirements for building is separate from the zoning decisions that the council makes. What we did for the parking requirements is what the city creates these things called frequent transit areas. And in urban villages that have a certain frequency of bus coming, they're exempted from providing parking. I was the only council member who voted against the 2017 effort to expand frequent transit areas to exempt more developers from having to provide parking with their developments.
I'll just say that I think the city does a very bad job at looking at what is the impact on each of the neighborhoods and the people who lived here for 5 years, 20 years, 50 years, because that's what I hear. I hear that everyone is feeling as though the city does this in its own little vacuum, in its own chamber, and doesn't care how it impacts the lives of the people around the city. That's one of the things I absolutely want to change by talking to the neighborhoods and making sure the things that we do as a city are to benefit everybody, not just a small group.
I'm going to take one of the questions for just a little break here. This is a two-part question to both of you, and I'm not sure, Lisa, Bill's going first, I believe. Mayor Jenny Durkin has proposed free college for 2 years for Seattle high school graduates. Question 1, are you in favor of this as it has been proposed? And if so, how will this be paid for?
So, I mean, look, I love the idea of being able to do that. I think we need to improve our education system in general, and making it easier for people to access education is great. Fact is, my mom worked for 35 years at a 2-year college, and when we talk about this, she points out, you realize there are ways that most people actually can pay for those, that in fact, it ends up being the books and the ancillary costs that end up costing so much money for people. So what I would say is, I think it's a great idea. Right now, we have other issues I think that are still more pressing that we need to take care of first. And that's actually one of the things where some of these academies that places like Microsoft and even Amazon want to work with some of the trade unions and some of the colleges to create training program opportunities that can filter into those jobs. So I think it's a good idea. Paying for it obviously then becomes a big question. So I think this is something that we're not ready to tackle right now.
So I believe it's a good idea, and so do the majority of the voters of Seattle. It's the question of how to pay for it is an answered question. The voters voted on the most recent Families in Ed and Promise levy to fund this program with a slight increase in people's property taxes to pay for it. So it is paid for already, and it is a program that the city is working on implementing.
Somebody who has
Going back to what the man said about the housing, and you also said, now Amazon has taken over Macy's.
only 6.
6 floors of Macy's. You build these big apartment buildings, how many people can afford to live there? Now you say it's for some of the low income? No, it's not for some of the low income, because they don't even get in there if it's 1 or 2. Now that building on 2nd and Seneca, that Amazon says, hey, I don't want it anymore. Where's our money going, our taxes going? That's not fair. But one thing about, the gentleman said something about downtown. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I went back home in August. They had messed up their downtown. What they should have done was bring the stores back downtown, because they got people living downtown now. It's terrible now. But if we get rid of our downtown and not bring that back, we're going to have more whatever. The city needs to bring the downtown back to what it used to be, so people can have to shop. That's how I feel about it.
Sharon had her hand up first, then we'll come back.
I'd like to address homelessness again. There's an ongoing debate in the city council on how to handle homeless camp cleanups. Some are even suggesting that funding be cut and even eliminated. What is your view on this?
So that has to do with the navigation teams. And I think specifically we need to commit to expanding the navigation teams, because their whole purpose is to go and talk to those people in those encampments and find out what they need. This is where you get data. This is finding out if people have mental health issues, substance abuse issues. Is it just a financial issue? Is it an issue with a job? Do they just want to go to where they go back home because they've come here to find, a relative or be with someone, and the situation where that person passed away or the job went away and they just got stuck? So I want to make sure that we expand the navigation teams so that we're going out and we're getting people into permanent housing and we're getting people the help they need.
So you're right, there is a proposal in the city council member of one council member to cut funding to the navigation team. To my knowledge, because we have budget committee meetings where a council member will propose something and then we all talk about it. To my knowledge, nobody supports that. I'm concerned that people are raising this as an issue to scare people. Nobody is proposing to cut the navigation team other than this one council member. So I encourage you to find ways of getting good information about what the city is doing, and feel free to always contact my office anytime you have a question about proposals before the council.
What is your view on
I do not support cutting the navigation team.
okay, what about expanding it?
So right now, we're funding, the navigation team costs are about $9 million. And a lot of times we talk about, like, oh, how much we're spending on homeless services, it's so much. It's almost a tenth of our funding for homeless services. I want to get more information about the outcomes. I'm disturbed that some of the numbers that we have about how successful the navigation team is in moving people out of homelessness and into shelter or better places, that the numbers are really low as compared to some of the other outreach workers that we fund, that we hold accountable to specific outcomes. So what I'm doing is I'm working with the city to get more robust reporting on what their outcomes are, and I want to base my decision on expanding the funding for that based on successful outcomes.
We've got one question in the back there.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I find fascinating is that with the navigation team that involves the police, we've got the council talking a lot about metrics and about holding them accountable. Yet, if you go to the website All Home that looks at the service providers for housing, Out of the 370 regional providers that deal with housing, only one provider meets 5 out of 5 minimum standard metrics, and only 32 meet 4 out of 5, yet they all keep getting their funding turned on. So we've got a council that's willing to say when the police and social workers are going out, we want metrics, we want to see what happens, we're only going to fund it if we get good results. Yet with those service providers in this region and in this city, they just keep the funding going and going and going without ever holding them accountable for bad results. So that's what I would see change.
Because we weren't doing rebate, but that was a rebate. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks. My proposal is really, it's not connected to a desire to cut the funding for the navigation team. It's about whether or not we add funding to the navigation team. So I think that's very different. And candidate Tavel makes reference to the fact that a lot of organizations aren't meeting their outcomes. We don't collect those outcomes. I sponsor the legislation for results-based accountability for our social service providers. We're not asking outcomes merely for the purpose of being able to cut people's funding. It's about creating a system of continuous improvement. If people aren't meeting their outcomes, then the Human Service Department works with them with a performance improvement plan to improve those outcomes, just like I want to do with the navigation team.
Okay, just as a reminder, it's one question per person, and that kind of got us off track a little bit.
Can we have some more on the cards?
Yes.
Okay, so my question,
She's had her hand up for a little while.
Oh.
I'll ask another one.
okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, my question is about the pharmaceutical companies. It's my understanding that, I don't remember what the representative's name was, but she's going after the pharmaceutical companies over, I guess the opioid crisis. But I was wondering what we are doing here in Seattle to look at that whole situation. I happen to work for a major retailer in Seattle, and so I got to see those invoices, and saw the markups for the medication that was a heart disease medication and insulin medication. And so I would see my father have heart disease.
Question.
And the question is, what are you doing to go back, not just over the pharmaceutical companies, but the vendors and the retailers themselves? Because it seems like there's a set price that's in place. A 3-cent medication is being sold for $100 per pill, and you're not going after that.
Time.
That's my question. What are you guys doing about that?
So, do we understand the question?
Do you understand
So-
the question?
I think so.
So I think, in general,
I think it's Lisa's up front. Sorry. I'm trying to get myself back on track.
So the way the city is supporting the solution to this problem that you identified is that there's been a class action suit that cities from all over the country have filed against pharmaceutical companies.
Right, I
And the city of Seattle has joined.
Where are you going with that?
Ma'am,
Right.
The city of Seattle has joined the suit. So that means our city attorneys are working on this lawsuit to address this issue. As it relates to some of the other points that you made, this is an area that's regulated by the federal government. So our ability to address it is twofold. One, by supporting this lawsuit and having our attorneys work on it to get justice for people who have been harmed by the opioid epidemic. And also we have what's called an Office of Intergovernmental Relations. So that means we have people that are working with the federal government to make changes in the laws on the federal.
I have a question. A minute or 45 seconds?
45 seconds. I was trying to keep it.
and actually for that, because I would say this is obviously something that a lot of people care about, we need to address. Councilmember Herbold is right. We need to join in and stay with the class action suit and watch that go. And this is an issue that's much larger than just Seattle. So I think it's something that whenever there's something that our city can do to fight that and keep the prices reasonable and keep access to drugs available, we've got to be behind it and support it. And in general, I think we just need to go along right now on a national scale of trying to fight this issue of the fact that we pay way too much for drugs.
Okay, I'm going to borrow your microphone here. I have another question from the cards. This one is for Lisa. And it is, well, there's two questions. But one will come later. Lisa, is that camper, looks like bumper, is that camper still in front of your house, and if not, why?
So that camper was not a motor vehicle. It was a camper, and we had an arrangement that I was going to let them move it into my driveway. The day before, they had to get a friend to tow it in. The day before it was going to be moved, SPD came and towed it. It's not like the 72-hour rules with RVs that are motor vehicles. It's not a motor vehicle. It's not allowed to be on the street at all, so that's why they wouldn't give them any extra time. The good news, though, is that they got housing. They got housing with Wellspring Family Services.
Oh, cool.
Why so fast? I mean, seriously, why so fast?
Somebody-
Because other people have these trailers.
Somebody saw on Facebook, somebody who works for Wellspring Family Services saw on Facebook their flight, and they had an opening.
I don't think that's the speed of which she was speaking. We have campers, trucks, and every other mode of, you might call vehicle, down below us, and we have been at this for 5 years, trying to get that street clean and kept clean. And how is it that one little camper that made the news got picked up so fast? I think that's what you asked, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's not, it wasn't a moving vehicle, it was a hitch trailer. So
That's
it
not the
can't
question.
be on the street, it's a different set of rules. The ones that you're dealing with on the city streets are moving vehicles.
Some of them are not able to be moved
Well,
once
broken, but
they're broken, right?
Yeah, this is a hitch. So it's like if somebody put a big container on the street.
Oh, okay.
It's a trailer. It's a trailer. Quit calling it a camper. It's a trailer. It needs to be on a hitch, and your car has to pull it.
Right. I do understand the difference in what you're saying, but I think the general public who has had to put up with these campers, trailers, hitches, trucks, automobiles, pony wagons, whatever you want to call it, that people are living in, we cannot get them moved yet because that was a hitch. It was moved overnight. We're just saying that it's not fair.
Yeah. You're not dealing with the program if you get it done so fast.
I didn't get it done. I didn't want them to tow it. I wanted to put it in my driveway.
Well, why didn't you do it?
Because the people who owned it needed to borrow a truck from their godfather, and that truck was supposed to come on Monday, and SPD towed it on Sunday.
That's all I know. Bill, did you have a comment?
No, I'm gonna just-
Okay. Question? I mean, I understand the frustration completely. Did you have a question, sir? Barb,
No.
you need to come on in the room. And Bill, he's got a microphone for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell us your name.
I'm Barbara, and my question is about the huge donation that Bezos made to Case. Is it Case?
Yes.
So I'm very suspicious of any big donation like that to a political campaign. So are you getting funding from that?
So, no. So Amazon has now put a total of $1.4 million into CASE, the Civic Alliance for a Sound Economy. So, for example, SEIU, the labor union, in 4 different iterations, has also put in over $1 million into other PACs. And so the fact is, we've got $8.4 million that have come in for PACs supporting all the 14 candidates across the race. The important thing to know is I don't see a cent of that. They don't put it into my campaign directly. In fact, I usually will only find out when someone says, oh, there was an independent expenditure done by a political action committee and it's coming out. And I have no idea. In fact, I am barred by law from doing anything to even say to them, stop doing that, I don't want it. What I've said, and I've said on all the forums, is I think it muddies the water. It clearly isn't going to help me, but I don't see any money from it. In fact, Case could give $250 to my campaign, but they never did. So it's them doing their own thing out and above.
So Ken tells right. The campaigns themselves don't see this money, but I'm not so it's true that that money isn't going directly to candidate Tavel, but it is going to support his candidacy. I do believe it's a false equivalency to compare $1.4 million in funding to buy these elections from Amazon to the worker union have received, I think so far maybe 30,000 funding. Again, it's not to me, but it's in support of my campaign.
Okay, having been a member of the Aerospace 751 and working on the Political Action Committee itself, I know that that money goes into the Political Action Committee and the candidates do not control what is said. Having said that, I know that there are unions supporting your candidacy and they're doing things to support you. So it's not fair for you to say that one candidate is getting more support than you because your unions have just as many $1 billion as Amazon or any other union.
Your question?
Is there a question in there?
Your question?
I would just like to say, can you honestly say that there are no union PACs supporting your candidacy?
I think that's a fair question.
There are, but the scale of the number of dollars is much smaller. I think in the primary, I had about $20,000, maybe $30,000 in spending in favor of my campaign, opposed to about $150,000 in support of candidate Table's campaign. And also, I believe those organizations that form those workers' PACs represent many, many, many more people. And so I don't think it's fair to compare a workers' PAC, a union's PAC that represents tens of thousands of people in this city with a big business PAC.
I just want to be able to say, what I was saying was about money coming into the race that's not going straight to campaigns, which is why we have to change it, which is why hopefully at some point we can get a turnaround on Citizens United. And I find it difficult when someone says they're trying to buy the seat when they are not attached to me. I'm running for this office because I believe in what I'm doing. They want to see change in the city because they don't like what's happening and they're spending money on it. And there's $8.4 million that have come in from outside PACs to support the 14 races around the city. And I think it is a perfect example of how we have to change it. I just want people to know that it's not my money, it's not coming in my pocket, I didn't ask for it, and if I had any control over it, I'd change it.
Quick follow-up on the camper, the roving people that park on the streets. I have, to be honest, I haven't paid too much attention lately to what's happening with this, but, my understanding is people can stand and sit in front of somebody's home for maybe weeks. What are each of you going to do? We didn't have this problem in Seattle 20, 30, 40 years ago. What are you going to do to try and get rid of this problem?
Well, there's two things I want to do. One, I want to empower the police to actually do their job and enforce the laws that are on the books. That when it says it's illegal and it's not allowed, we do something about it. And I do think we need to have safe parking spaces. We need places where these vehicles can be that are not on the side of the road, so that there's places to pump out sewage, there's places to throw garbage, and there's, once again, to these questions, an attachment to services. So that if it's someone who's stuck living in a vehicle, there is a way to get them out and past that. And also, we've got to stop the ability for anybody to be able to buy the derelict campers and sell them back to someone for almost no money and just perpetuate this problem.
Yeah.
So the police department is empowered to enforce these laws. It's a matter of priorities and resources. You talked about the concern that you have about crime. There are 400 different encampments throughout the city. And so what I've done is I've worked to start an RV remediation program that funds the police department to work with Seattle Public Utilities to identify throughout the city 10 locations every month that they prioritize using public safety and public health criteria to identify which locations where there are RVs and which ones they remove. It's a matter, the police department has to prioritize the work that they do every day across a whole bunch of different laws. And so they cannot simply do every single RV without additional funding, which I've helped provide.
I have a question.
He's got one, and then we'll come to you, and we'll to you.
I have a question. So, this is a neighborhood question.
What's your name?
expensive. I'm sure the city can afford it. And because right now, we still got a camper down there right now. It looks like it's been vacated. I don't know, it's from Minnesota. So what does that tell you? Trucks come there and they park at night. Many residents have told me they're being woken up at 4 in the morning because they're starting their engines up, their diesels, and they're running and running and running. Why are these vehicles there? They shouldn't be there. They should not, there's no reason why anyone should park along there. It's just woods. There's no houses. We have the JTF next door. We have the LDS church up the street. That's it. There should be no parking along there. I want a commitment from either one of you, whoever gets elected, that you look into giving no parking signs. I talked to the parking enforcement officer. She agrees with me. She agrees with me that we should have no parking signs there. I've also talked to Mr. Burrington at the Seattle Department of Transportation. And he said he'd see what he could do. I've never heard back from him. So I want a commitment from either one of you that you can look into it and see what you can do about a simple thing like some no parking signs.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, in fact, it's being responsive in the community and finding out the things we can do that lets us get ideas like that because you've been here, you've thought of it, your life experience tells you that's something you can do. So yes, I mean, what's nice is we could put those there. So you have got my commitment that I will look to do everything to be able to make sure that you don't have the situation you've got right now.
Okay, there were two hands up, we can take those left. I'm sorry, Lisa.
We don't need to wait until January. If you have an exchange that you had with an SDOT transportation planner, forward it to me. I'll look into it tomorrow.
Waited for 5 years.
Okay, we've got two hands in the air. We're going to take those two questions and these two questions, and then we're going to wrap up with their closing statement. So, Sharon, right? Sherry? Right. And then the lady in the black coat.
I'm Sandy, and I would like to know if the city has a specific plan for gun control, or if it's just on a time, each time something happens.
Her question was whether or not the city has a plan for gun control. Lisa?
I'm really honored to have the endorsement of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility because of the work that I've been doing with Councilmember Gonzalez taking the lead around the issue of gun control. And so some of the things that we've done is we've taxed ammunition. Those dollars are going to fund a public health response to the misuse of guns, and we also are working with the state legislature to see what changes that we can make there that will survive a constitutional challenge.
I just wanted to say that I worked in a psych hospital for many years, and my opinion is that background checks aren't enough because anyone can get around a background check.
We've seen that. Okay, I'm going to ask one of these hard questions. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Actually, since you were asking about what the plans were, obviously, I mean, I agree with you, but I think one of the big issues we have is that tie-in between mental health issues and the access to guns. This is also one of those things when someone has actually broken law or shown that they should not have access to guns, that not only do we need to make sure they don't, but we need to inform the people around them, their friends and family, to let them know that this person has been an issue and what they've done means they can't have access to it. Specifically with people who are perpetrators of domestic violence. I've dealt with that before, where those people who are guilty of domestic violence, nobody ever lets the people around them know that now they can't have a firearm, but they shouldn't have that access. So I agree, we need a component of that background check that deals with mental health issues and identifying people that shouldn't have that access.
Can I just make a comment? I believe that, from my experience, that there should be let's say, a medical.
Sherry, you can have a one-on-one with them when we're done with this, and that's just fine. They'll be here for a few minutes at least, that they can talk a little bit more on that. I'm going to ask one of the questions, and then Pat in the back has a question after me, and then I have one more card. From one of our audience members, it says, I notice a lot of towel signs disappearing lately and being replaced by Herbold signs in the same spot.
Can you say that again?
Okay, I had to read it twice. It says, I notice a lot of towel signs disappearing lately and being replaced by Herbold signs in the same spot. Can you explain this action? So
So I'm guessing that Lisa gets to answer this question. Doesn't have a name on it, but I'm guessing that's who it is.
My volunteers,
Actually, my question.
yeah, my volunteers are out.
I'm the one that put the signs out, and I've been watching them. Your signs don't disappear.
Oh, I just got an email from, I just got an email from a guy today who asked me for $300 to, in order to get my signs back that he's
Oh
been
my God.
taking. I don't know if it's a phishing scam or what it is, but he asked me to pay him electronically $300 so I can get my signs back that he's been taking. So believe me, I had a volunteer go out and put 30 signs this weekend, 20 of them were down. When they're on public,
These signs are immediately.
Let's not debate.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know my volunteers are putting signs up. I'm asking them not to remove anybody else's signs, but I'm really sorry that that's happening.
So we're gonna put more up.
Well, I think we all have to
I
work
would
on,
say the same.
I think we all have to work on the honor system. That's like grade school behavior, and it goes on in every single election. And I don't understand it either. Last question on the card, and this one is also to Lisa. It says, where is your primary residence? West Seattle or North Bend, and where do you spend most of your nights?
Island Park. It's my only residence. My husband has a house in North Bend. I happen to not have gone there for the last 3 months, but I do on occasion visit him. Mostly he comes to visit me, though. I see my husband 3 to 4 days a week. He maintains that house because he has shared custody of his daughter, and his daughter was born in that house, and he's going to keep it until she graduates and goes to college. But yeah, my only residence is in West Seattle in Highland Park.
We've got about 2 more minutes, and Susan, and then one more question, and then we're going to give it the wrap-up time.
So everybody's been talking about increased density in Seattle for the last 20 years, which is reasonable. But is anybody starting to give any thought to what the limits of that are?
Density.
When will it be too many people? We don't want the entire city turning into little houses.
Well, I will say, I actually have seen that there isn't a plan. I remember several years ago talking to someone involved with the Downtown Seattle Association when I was getting involved in the city, and I asked, who's the keeper of the plan? Who's the one that's looking at our growth and how people are coming and how we can expand and how we're going to build a city that actually accommodates that without just becoming overcrowded, and also making sure that the people who've spent their whole lives here aren't the ones left out of that and everybody's just planning for making it nice for the people who are just moving here. The answer I was given was nobody, that there wasn't a plan. Now this is also where we try to look ahead in our planning for our city, but I think it's something that's not adequate. And what I will tell you is the biggest thing we can do is make sure that the sound transit plan and light rail moves here, because we are an area where if you live more than 10 miles away from downtown, it's going to be pretty hard to get around anywhere.
So our planning derives from the Growth Management Act, which is under the state, and they prescribe to Seattle, and not just to Seattle, but to all the other major cities in the region, the number of residents and jobs that we need to plan for within our city. And so they work with an entity called the Puget Sound Regional Council, and that is where those plans are monitored. And they're based upon the amount of growth that the state tells us we need to plan for.
Even though I said there wasn't any more questions, I've got one last one, and that is about rapid transit. I think it's absolutely absurd that 2037 is when we're supposed to get rapid transit in West Seattle, and in the meantime, you're having upbuilding with no parking and no place to go and not enough buses. And I think the solution that's been created is ridiculous. And how will you speed that process if you have the ability to do that on the city council?
So I think you're talking about sound transit. We have rapid ride for the buses.
There's not enough.
There is not enough, you're right. So we have the Rapid Ride C. It is of the 10 most frequently used lines in all of the metro system. The top, on that list of 10, 2 of the routes are from West Seattle. One of them's the Rapid Ride C, the other one's the 120, which we're working to convert to a Rapid Ride line that should be happening over the next few years. As a council member, I work with Metro to use our transportation benefit dollars to buy additional Metro service. Metro runs our bus service, so we have to use those resources wisely, but I have worked to increase service for several bus lines in this district.
120 is not a rapid ride.
It is being converted to a rapid ride.
Going to.
Right, and as I talk to people at bus stops about getting around, the things I hear is those changes should have happened faster. That we saw this growth coming. This hasn't been a shock. This hasn't been something that happened overnight. And so I think the planning has unfortunately fallen short. And we do need to expand our bus service, expand the rapid ride, and do it a lot faster. Because like you said, we're not even going to get to see the benefit of this. And we need to just put pressure. We need to use the fact that as the city council, we're the council for the single largest city in the state. So we should be able to apply pressure to say that we want that faster and figure out if there are impediments that the city can work on, then we need to work on those.
That is how we end the questions, and I really appreciate everybody who asked a question, and I hope you got the answers that you wanted or you were looking for. We're going to give each one of the candidates 3 minutes. Phil will start, as Lisa started with the questioning first. On my behalf, I want to thank you all for coming here, but the more important thing than even showing up here tonight is voting. Anyone, and I know I'm speaking to the wrong crowd here, but anyone who doesn't believe their voice counts and that their vote is important is mistaken. And I can't tell you often enough to talk to your neighbor and make sure they voted, and if they didn't, find out why and change their mind. And with that, I'm going to give it to Phil, and you'll be timed at 3 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you to Arrowhead Gardens, and thank you to all, truly, for coming out and listening. I mean, that's the beauty of our democratic process, is you get the chance to come out, talk to the candidates, and yes, vote. I don't know if people realize, but in August for the primary, 40,000 people just in West Seattle didn't vote. Only 28,000 out of 68,000 came and voted. And so please make sure you do that and tell everybody else. And then tell them to tell everybody else, because that's how it happens. Well, I just want to say I love this city. I mean, I moved here 21 years ago because I fell in love with West Seattle. I fell in love with Seattle. And I got involved in politics when my son was about to be born 8 years ago. I started thinking about it, and that's how I got involved in my neighborhood, because I wanted to see a city that he was going to be proud to grow up in, a city that actually reached its potential and was as good to the people of the city as we are to it. I mean, I always see every time when we get a new levy and a new tax put on us to pay for transportation or pay for education or pay to childcare, we as a city say, yes, we want those things, so we'll pay more. And I feel like our city has squandered that generosity that we've given to it. I see a city that is heading in the wrong direction. The issues of homelessness, that we're not caring for people who have mental health issues and substance abuse issues, when we could. We've got the money, we have the capacity, we just don't marshal our resources very well. We don't manage them. We have so much in the city, but we fail to keep track of what we're doing and what we're getting for it. And what I just keep hearing is that we need more money and more money for everything. And you know what? We might find out that we do still need more money, but I don't want to ask that question and go to the taxpayers and say, give me more, until we've been able to show what we're doing is unsuccessful just because of money. Because what I see is a city that's not managing itself properly. There are so many homeless service providers that are not being kept accountable for what they're doing. And so to that end, it's about our neighborhoods, about the quality of life we have. And it's not just that, it's the police. You know, we have the same police staffing now that we had in 1968. And yes, there are police staffing issues happening all around the country. And yes, our city council votes to give them more money and increase the pay. But I've talked to dozens and dozens of police officers that have made it loud and clear that their issue is they feel there's a city that doesn't support them. I know I had a police officer, actually the sergeant at arms for the Guild, told me the other night that he would much rather be given $1 a day and a pat on the back than $2 a day. He said they haven't felt for the longest time like they have a city that actually supports what they do. And so I ask for your vote. Philip Cavell, thank you very much.
I also want to echo candidate Cavell's thanks for your attendance tonight and thanks for your interest in the City of Seattle Council elections. I've been really honored to serve West Seattle and South Park for the last 3.5 years. I've really appreciated the opportunity to work with people in our district to raise their voices, to make sure that City Hall is tending to their day-to-day needs for improvements to their neighborhoods. I've worked to make sure that Seattle City Light goes out and fixes the street lights on streets where there have been assaults. I've worked to make sure that SDOT goes out and does patches of the streets that are scheduled in a couple years to be repaved because that work needs to be done now. I've worked to pass new laws to improve the vacant building standards so that when you have a vacant building in your neighborhood, you can know that it's going to be boarded up and not be a place that's unsafe. I've worked to extend the hours of the Coleman Pool. It's a whole range of things, but what I do on the city council, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what a city council member does. You call me when the city's not doing what they're supposed to do. And then I use your voice, just like I said to Norm earlier. Contact me if SDOT isn't responding to your request for parking signs. That's what a city council member does. We're a legislative body. We pass laws and we pass the budget. Other than that, the departments don't take orders from us, right? They all work for the mayor. But what I can do is I can elevate your voice and get the representation that you need. And that's what I've found such a great satisfaction in doing for this district. My signs say I get it done because it's true. I do. I respond to constituent services. I've raised the bar in the city for what district representation looks like. I have the support of the King County Democrats, the endorsement of the 11th District Democrats, the 34th District Democrats, MLK Labor, a whole bunch of other labor unions. I have the support of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the National Women's Political Caucus, Planned Parenthood, our King County Council member, Joe McDermott, our Congresswoman, Camilla Jayapal, our state representative, Joe Fitzgibbons, our state senator, Joe Nguyen. I have the support of a broad breadth of individuals and organizations because I am changing the rules with your help of what district representation looks like. We voted for district council members in 2015 because